Well, good evening, everyone. We're so glad you could join us today. My name is Charlene Margot, and I am co-founder of nonprofit The Parent Venture. Today, we are delighted to have with us Dr. Sarah Levine, who's going to be talking with you about artificial intelligence in the classroom. Please join me, everybody, for a really warm virtual welcome for Dr. Sarah Levine. Take it away, Sarah.
Okay, so we all know why we're here. Generative AI, things like Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT have emerged. They've been around now since November 2022, and this is just a, as they say, an inflection point in how we think about how our children are going to learn and how our teachers are going to teach. And I'm particularly interested in reading and writing in the middle and high school classrooms. Many of you probably have seen something like ChatGPT at work. You've used it maybe to compose, to edit. Our kids are doing the same. And many teachers and educators are reasonably afraid, reasonably concerned about the kind of influence that something like ChatGPT might have on our students' thinking. So I just want to share with you just a little bit of that fear, and then maybe talk a little bit about ways that I think generative AI, like chatbots like ChatGPT, might actually be useful for us. So you can see here, abject terror, teachers on alert. The end of high school English has just been a wave of despair about what this new technology means for student thinking. People are especially concerned, obviously, about cheating. And I think that I am also concerned about that, but I just like to think about tech like ChatGPT in context. When we think about writing as an individual, you at your desk, in the head kind of enterprise, then something like ChatGPT seems really upsetting because suddenly you've got something doing all your work for you. But if you think about writing in terms of what it really is in the world, which is social, distributed across all sorts of resources, think about Google Docs, Grammarly, Wikipedia, not to mention your cousin, your aunt, your friend, people that you go to shop ideas around, to think about things as you are writing and thinking. When we think about ChatGPT and other tech chatbots like ChatGPT, as part of that networked, distributed process of writing, to me, it seems a little bit less concerning. Yes, it is a completely new kind of tool, but it's not as though students haven't been, and they should be, working outside of their own brain and their own desk when they're doing writing. So I just kind of want to lay that out there first. And then I just want to share with you some of the research I've been doing about what real students in real classrooms are doing with ChatGPT. I'm going to share some research that's happening in the Bay Area. In this case, just a small little study of 12 high school students from a Bay Area school, all of whom are first-generation college-going students. Their diversity, their racial and ethnic diversity of our study matches what is the school, which is about 60% Latina, 30% African-American, and 10% AAPI or APITA. About 50% of the students in this study are multilingual, and their first language was not English, and they just had a whole range of writing skills. And we went there and partnered with teachers there to find out really what are kids doing with ChatGPT and what could they do besides cheating. So we asked a couple of questions during this study. This is a study from last year. What did students prompt ChatGPT to do when they were involved in writing assignments? And then how did students take up ChatGPT's responses to those prompts? So what did they ask? ChatGPT, help me. And when ChatGPT said, here's your help, what did students do with that help? All right, so far so good. We ask students to engage in a couple of very school-like assignments. For example, let's say your school needs a new mascot, and the administration of your school is considering a new mascot to replace their old one, and they're considering redwoods, seals, warriors. The school administration asks you to submit your arguments for and against mascots, or you can set your own idea. It doesn't have to be redwoods or seals or warriors. It could be anything you want. In your argument, please include, and you can see here a list of things that we ask students to include. This is a very typical argument writing assignment that you'll see on standardized tests, that you'll see in ninth grade entry English classes, argument, claim, evidence, explanation. We gave the students this assignment and we said, you can use ChatGPT for anything you want except writing the whole thing. We already know that you can copy and paste something from ChatGPT onto a piece of paper. We get it. But we're interested to see what else ChatGPT might do for you and how you might interact with this tool in other ways. We collected a whole bunch of data. We collected the students' interactions with ChatGPT, so everything they typed in and everything ChatGPT gave them. We collected all of the writing that they did. You can see an example of an argument here about mascots. We did interviews with students, asking them things about their own writing and their sense of ChatGPT, as you can see here. So what happened? First, we looked at what students asked ChatGPT when they were doing this assignment about these school mascots. And before I share this with you, I'll let you know that the first thing we did with students before we embarked on any kind of writing assignments was make sure that they knew what ChatGPT was. And we gave them about an hour to tinker with it, to play with it, to give it prompts, to see what it could do. About half the students were very familiar with ChatGPT, and about half had heard of it, but not used it, or at least they told us that they hadn't used it. That was our first session. Then we came back the next week and we began work on these argument prompts. We looked at some different kinds of questions that students asked. All told, our 12 students asked about 50 questions of ChatGPT during their hour-long writing sessions. And we categorized these questions in three big buckets. First kind of category or code was planning. So we looked for any request to ChatGPT that was connected to goals, idea generation, or organizing. Stuff like, why would seals be a weak school mascot? Or what do warriors symbolize? So you can see here the kids are kind of getting ready. They have an idea about what they want to say. And now they are coming to ChatGPT to get some ideas as they're planning their essay. Then there's actually writing. That's when you're moving from the head to words on a screen or words on a page. For example, can you give me an example of a hook for argumentative essays regarding a change in school mascots? So here they want ChatGPT to give them an actual sentence, an introductory sentence that they want to maybe use in their essay. And then finally, evaluating. These are all prompts related to asking ChatGPT to edit, to read, to evaluate students' writing. Stuff like, can you proofread this paragraph? Or can you give me some stronger power words? So those are the big kinds of categories that we looked at when we looked at all of the students' prompts to ChatGPT. Well, here's what we found. We found that out of the 50 or 52 prompts that all 12 students gave ChatGPT, most of them were about planning. That is, tell me what you think warriors symbolize. That means in my essay, I know I want to talk about what a mascot like warriors might symbolize. You give me some of that information, and then I'm going to figure out how to argue it. So in planning, it's not that students don't know what they want to write. They have an idea of what they want to write, and now they're asking ChatGPT to basically they're getting data from ChatGPT. even though we know that ChatGPT is not always accurate. Only about 16% of students' prompts were requests for actual language that they were going to cut and paste and put in their essays. And this is something we were kind of surprised about because so many of us have been worried about cheating, copying and pasting. To see that students were very rarely asking ChatGPT to give them stuff was kind of heartening. And then about 30% of the prompts were evaluative. Can you fix this? Can you edit this? My guess, there would have been even more evaluative requests had the students had more time to write. If we had given them 2 hours instead of an hour, there may have been a ton of evaluative questions. And I can see that someone is raising a hand, but I can't see who or what they want. So let me know, or maybe drop it in the chat, somebody, so I can see that if you want me to stop now. Meanwhile, I'll keep going. So here's an example, and then we can talk more when I'm done sharing this data with you about what you think about these categories, whether they make sense to you, and whether our conclusions make sense to you. So here's an example. Here's Chloe and Daisy deciding on a husky as their mascot. They said they're not interested in warriors or seals or redwood trees. They want to go with a dog. And Daisy says, okay, I was thinking we should go with an animal. And Chloe says, yes, Dakota, because that's the dog at their school. She says, he's been here the longest. I'm going to share with you now a little bit of their back and forth. I see the question, are the students aware that the accumulated information AI is the lowest possible common denominator? I'd say about, no, I'd say no. As much as their teachers and we showed them that what ChatGPT and other bots are, this is very crude, but they're basically prediction machines. They're giant autofill machines. So if I say, hello, how, you know the next word's going to be are, because that's what most people say after the word hello, how. And that means that what they're receiving is the kind of the average of all that information. It's not clear to me how much students understand that. And one of the implications of this study is that when teachers start working with students and with something like ChatGPT, we need 3-4 separate lessons to help illustrate and be transparent with kids about how this thing works and why it essentially is an autofill and not a thinker. Okay, so here's what Chloe and Daisy did.
Yeah. Oh, we can also ask what can huskies symbolize?
Oh, okay.
Hopefully you can hear this.
What can huskies symbolize?
What do huskies? I'm gonna say it says like hard work, because huskies are hardworking dogs.
Dakota's not hardworking, but it's okay. We'll go with
No,
that.
but it's the thought that counts. Okay, huskies symbolize strength, stamina, loyalty,
There you
intelligence,
go.
independence, boom, and their connection to nature.
Oh, I can take notes and then you can like write anything
okay.
when we come up with it.
So that I think is fantastic. Eastside is super involved in nature. You know, the trips we go on.
Eastside involved nature. So they rep strength, stamina, loyalty, and intelligente.
Yeah.
And independence. And yeah, connection to
Yeah. I think huskies, boom.
They are a symbol of Arctic
and wilderness.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I don't think the rest of that is important, but those...
So those are good. It represents this.
What's next on the list? That's why your claims. Other choice. Okay, redwood.
Oh, so counter argument.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Let's first of all.
Should we look up why would redwood trees be a weak mascot?
School mascot. Yeah.
Let's see what it gives us.
Or maybe put trees in general. Be a weak school mascot.
All right, we'll stop there.
Yeah. Oh, we can also.
Okay. So this is just one little snippet of the kinds of conversations that we saw as kids, in this case, worked in pairs to write arguments about school mascots. And here are some of the things that I'm thinking about, and you can tell me what you think when we break. So I'm seeing examples of planning. For example, they've already decided that these two kids want a dog to be a husky, to be the mascot for their school. So they've made this decision themselves. It's their idea. Now they're asking ChatGPT, okay, what do huskies symbolize? So they know that part of their argument is going to be what huskies kind of connotative values are, what they might represent. Here, they didn't ask ChatGPT, what should we say about huskies? They had a sense of what they wanted to say, and now basically they're using ChatGPT like Google, like Wikipedia. What do huskies symbolize? And now that you can see, they're making some predictions about what ChatGPT is going to tell them. And now here comes ChatGPT. ChatGPT tells them strength, stamina, loyalty, intelligence. The students now identify the aspects of ChatGPT's output that they think are salient. Huskies symbolize strength, stamina, loyalty, intelligence, independence. Boom. These are the things that they are interested in. They can tell that this is going to be good for their argument. And then they go on and they do something that I think is really important that we're not paying yet enough attention to in our classrooms, which is what stuff in what ChatGPT gives you is important to you, is relevant, and what isn't. And here you can see Chloe says, I don't think the rest of that stuff, like symbol of the Arctic, I don't think the rest of that stuff's important. I'm pleased to see this kind of evaluating on the students' part. All right, so what happened next? Chloe and Daisy wrote a draft about their school mascot. And as you can see here, they say, just one of the reasons that Eastside is special is that it is a dog-friendly campus, comma. We feel this is now a part of the Eastside culture and it should be reflected in the mascot. Most notably, the dog who has been here the longest, Rocky, we're calling it Rocky here, but in other places they call it Dakota, the husky. At Eastside, we pride ourselves in being intelligent, strong, loyal, and independent. And here you can see they're picking up the language from ChatGPT and using it in context in their argument. We believe that a husky would be a felicitous fit because they also represent these same qualities. Oops, sorry. And I'll just stop here to tell you that the word felicitous came straight from ChatGPT. The students asked the bot, I want another word for the word suitable. ChatGPT gave them a whole bunch of words. The two kids focused on the word felicitous because they didn't know what it meant. They asked for the definition, they asked for the pronunciation, and they asked ChatGPT to use it in a sentence. Then they liked the word, and now it's in their essay. So essentially, they've learned a word here from ChatGPT. Nothing that they couldn't have learned from the thesaurus, but here it's from ChatGPT. Then they say, although the other options can be suitable for other schools, they really don't align with ours. First off, a redwood tree, terrible mascot. No hate to Stanford, they make it work. But in a high school environment, this could weaken school pride. Come on, what high schoolers would want to say, go trees, a hippie? Additionally, they don't truly represent as much of our desired qualities as Eastside students. So this was their draft. What happens next? They gave this draft to ChatGPT and asked ChatGPT to edit it. First, you can see in their particular input to ChatGPT, they asked, what do huskies symbolize? ChatGPT gave them strength, loyalty, intelligence, independence. And you can see, as I just mentioned, in their draft, the students used those words in their own context as part of their argument. We found that overall, 17% of individual words from ChatGPT output showed up in students' drafts, words like intelligent, strong, and loyal. But that also includes individual words like mascot or school. So when you consider that those words, mascot, school, are going to show up in ChatGPT and students' drafts, it's actually a very small percentage of the total words that kids use that came straight from ChatGPT. All right, so how did they use this output? Chloe and Daisy finished up their draft, and then they handed it over to ChatGPT. They said, this is an argument on why we should change the school mascot to Huskies, comma, can you edit for grammar and coherency? And then they gave ChatGPT their draft. Here's what happened next.
One of the things that sets Eastside apart is our dog-friendly campus, and we believe that this should be reflected in the school's mascot. For many of us, the long-standing dog on campus is Helen's Husky, Dakota. Oh my gosh, this is way better.
Way better, dang.
Eastside prides itself on being intelligent, strong, loyal, and independent, and we believe that Huskies embody these same qualities.
First thing I want to ask when we've broken in for discussion is, why do they think it's so much better? That's a question for English teachers. It's just like, it's gold. It's a gold question for English teachers and teachers of writing to be asking students.
One of the things that sets Eastside apart, for many of us, the long-standing dog on campus is Helen's Husky, Dakota. Oh my gosh, this is way better.
Way better, dang.
Eastside prides itself on being intelligent, strong, loyal, and independent, and we believe that Huskies embody these same qualities. That's valid. That's valid. While other mascots may be suitable for other schools, they do not align with the values and qualities we have as Eastside students. The idea of a redwood tree as a mascot seems terrible and would be inappropriate for
It
a
just
high
took
school
out all of our
setting.
personality, though.
I know.
Did it take out our hippie? No, it took out the hippie.
Okay, I like the introduction for this.
Hmm.
So I think we could switch it because this is saying the same thing, but it's like
It's more like
worded better.
yeah.
Yeah, that was lame.
The third option of words may sound strong, but may be seen as glorifying violence, which is against inclusive and accepting nature. You said. I like that sentence.
Mm-hmm.
We'd also want to enforce the importance of being sensitive towards all cultural groups. Not like yes, but we already said that. Overall.
All right. Moving on. What did students take up from ChatGPT? You saw the draft, you saw ChatGPT's edit, and you heard the students say, oh my gosh, this is way better, dang. Of course, the question is why? Why do they think it's way better? We'll put a pin in that for now, but I'll just tell you that they took the entire introduction, the first paragraph, and they used ChatGPT's version for their final paper. So now we have to talk about what that means in terms of learning gained, learning lost. Then the second paragraph, students draft, you remember a redwood tree, terrible mascot, no hate to Stanford, but come on, who would want to say go trees? A hippie? They saw ChatGPT's edit, and as you heard them say, they took out all of our personality. They took out the hippie, they took out the hippie. So here the kids noticed immediately that the tone and the diction of this second paragraph were much different and to them much flatter and more generic. That goes back to our lowest common denominator, much flatter and much more generic than the writing they had done. In their final paper, they ignored this entire paragraph and used their own. So what to make of this? A couple of things. First, I think that using text-based AI, based on the research I've been doing and a lot of other research that people are just publishing right now, text-based AI can, yes, for sure, be a coach to students. It can be an editor, it can be an inspiration, it can be a co-author. How worried should we be about that? I don't feel like we should be too worried. We use those resources in our everyday lives all the time. In fact, some of us pay for coaches and editors. Some of us have parents or aunts or cousins or older siblings who act as our co-authors. When it comes to resources, this kind of chatbot can be especially useful for kids who don't have an aunt or a cousin or who don't have the time or the bandwidth to work with an aunt or a cousin to make their writing stronger. So now we've got a little bit of an evening of the playing field. I think just as important is ChatGPT offers students the opportunity to understand that when it comes to writing, to composing, to communicating, there's more than just one way. Many students in schools, even today, really believe that there's one right answer still when it comes to communicating, when it comes to writing. And that right answer either sits on a rubric or it's in their teacher's mind, and their job is to figure out what the teacher wants. ChatGPT offers students, you could ask ChatGPT to take the paragraph that you wrote and give you 10 different versions, formal, informal, more moody, less moody, angry, pleasant. And you could understand that there are 10 or 100 or 1,000 different ways to say the same thing. And that's really what composition and writing is about. No teacher has the bandwidth to create contrasting cases like that for each of their individual students and their individual writing. In this case, ChatGPT and other bots like it can do a lot of really useful work. I think a really useful teaching work. Just to elaborate on that, students can use ChatGPT to see different versions of their own work, style, language, ideas. You notice that the kids, when they were looking at ChatGPT's edit, said, oh, it took away all our personality. I think a lot of kids don't even know that they have a personality in their writing. They don't know that they have a voice because you need contrasts to see that you have a voice. Schools don't have a lot of time to offer those contrasts. So here, this robot helped kids understand a little bit more of the humanity of their own writing. Finally, I think that ChatGPT, at least in the next couple of years, could support students' reading skills as much as it supports their writing, as long as they are actually reading the output that ChatGPT is offering. Because ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, they all spit out a lot of text. If students are actually reading this text and making decisions about what to use and what not to use, then they're doing a lot more reading than they might be currently. That will change probably in 5 years when we move from text to text to voice to text. But for now, I feel some optimism about that aspect of ChatGPT and other bots as well. And I think I'll stop there. And we can always come back to any of these slides, but let's talk a little bit about what I showed you here and what you yourself are seeing and are concerned about in your own environments.
Well, thank you, Sarah Levine, for that really, really interesting discussion. So everybody, comments in the chat or questions in the Q&A. I'm going to start by just a couple things, Sarah, because I know you, as you say, you were a longtime educator, an award-winning educator. Parents are worried about ChatGPT. As a teacher, are you worried too? Or do you sound more confident today than you did a month ago?
I like everybody, I am both, I can see that there's nuance.
Yeah.
I think I'm more optimistic than many. And that is because I've had an opportunity to do some research in this area and to see the imaginative ways that kids are using this tool. And I've also had the chance over the last 20 years to see how many kids don't have the kinds of resources that something like ChatGPT can offer them. So in terms of equity, I'm feeling optimistic. I think when things go south is when teachers and students do not discuss together what these bots can do. I think the most beneficial thing that teachers can do now is take a week in their classrooms to introduce the thing, to show people how it works, to have kids understand the kind of autofill processes and the algorithms upon which it's based, to talk and to engage in exercises where they are deciding together, what about this? Is this cheating? What about this? What if I asked ChatGPT to write my whole paper? Would that be cheating? What if I did it just to give me an outline? Would that be cheating? And you will be surprised to see how many students are much harsher than their teachers in saying, no, that's cheating, that's unethical, that lacks integrity. Whereas more teachers are like, well, that wouldn't be so bad. To have that kind of transparent discussion in the classroom is, I think, essential. And then to invite students to tinker with the tool, to invite students to use it, let's say in writing a draft of an essay. I'm in an English language arts class, let's say. Then to compare draft to ChatGPT, line by line. What works? What doesn't work? Why do you say so? That is what expert writers and editors do. And we don't do a lot of that in our classrooms right now. We don't do a lot of editing because we don't have time. And we don't do a lot of comparison because we don't have the opportunity. Now we do.
I think that's a really, really interesting point. I know I've been a writer and editor all my life, and so I've been playing with ChatGPT. What I'm finding is after a while, I get tired of what it's telling me, and I go back to what I've written myself. Like it gives me ideas, but then I'm like, that's not what I meant. I think one thing really interesting, we had your colleague Isabel Howe, who's the executive director at the Stanford Accelerator for Learning, talking about AI about a month ago. And she said there's this interesting thing called, I'm sure you know this, the adoption curve. How
Mhm.
long does it take 50 million people to use something? So it turns out it was 68 years for airlines, 46 years for electricity, 14 years for computers, 7 years for the internet, and 5 weeks for ChatGPT to reach that saturation.
Wow, that's
That
great.
kind of puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
Yep, yep. I mean, I'm not surprised that we are as generations as we move forward, we'll be quicker to adapt most anything in the tech world. But yeah, that's astonishing.
But I remember I went from Stanford's lab school teaching young children to IBM at the beginning of educational software development. And we were really worried that computers were going to replace teachers. Like there just weren't going to be teachers, we wouldn't need them. That didn't happen. So I'm hoping has a similar trajectory.
Well, I am a little worried about that, honestly.
You
I am.
are.
Yes, I think a dystopian version of the emergence of these chatbots is that schools with a lot of resources have teachers and robots, and that schools with few resources just have robots. So it's now we're all doing our one-to-one computer work and we don't have humans in the room or as many humans as we should helping us in the ways that we need teachers to help us with, that teachers are, these bots cannot, if people decide to make classes bigger and to use more bots and more one-to-one computing, we are going to lose. So yes, I am concerned about, especially in schools with few resources, I'm concerned about districts and governments saying, well, let's just throw some more bots in there.
That was the same thing that Isabel said, Sarah, exactly. Is for under-resourced kids in schools and families, they get the robot, other kids get the human tutor.
Yep, 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 yep.
So we just have to be aware of that. All right. Before we go jump into the audience questions, and I'm going to do that in 1 second, I want to ask, we're hearing anecdotally that kids with learning differences or neurodivergence are benefiting from tools like ChatGPT. What are you seeing in that realm?
Yes, I think that's right. I think if you think about any kid who doesn't fit into the mold of a kind of conventional school where you're sitting, you're listening. I mean, not all schools are like that, and more, they're becoming more active and more engaging. But there's still a lot of expectations with school that you're sitting and listening and absorbing information. Um, Kids who are neurodivergent or who simply don't fit the standard model that school expects can benefit, I think, from bots like these. Number one, because the bots never turn off and they're always patient and they never shame you. And if you remember back to your own high school days, just about anything is embarrassing and shaming. And think about all of the questions you didn't ask in a high school classroom because you were embarrassed to even look like you were curious. So bots like these allow kids who are shy, who don't think the rest like the rest of their class is thinking, to spend time engaging in knowledge development with these what are, essentially robots, and they're kind of messed up robots too. They have lots of problems. But yes, I think that that's right. And so I think there's some benefit, if only because these bots give students time and room and space to ask questions.
Really good point. I think I went through high school without ever raising my hand, just for that reason.
Well, you would be, I mean, maybe you wouldn't be surprised, even here at Stanford, people are embarrassed to be wrong. And so they don't raise their hands. And yeah, so there's room for other outlets for curiosity.
Well, and all of us love seeing those kids at Eastside so excited about writing. As a teacher, I'm sure that really warmed your heart.
Oh yeah, remember the fact that they said it took out all of our personality, that kept me going for a couple of months. So again, I think it's key to know that many students don't know that they have a writing personality, or it's been kind of suppressed. So to be able to compare your stuff with the lowest common denominator robot, to see just how human you are, I think is like a miracle.
Well, and I was part of that class that voted in the tree's mascot, so they can blame me.
Awesome. Yeah, that's right. Sorry about that.
Okay, some good questions from the audience. Here we go, Sarah.
Yeah.
Writer asks, would using AI to assist in writing be acceptable in advanced degree programs? It seems that it should be a requirement to communicate clearly in writing without assistance.
Yeah, so you won't be surprised to know that many people in advanced degree programs, even here at Stanford and across the country and across the globe, are using things like ChatGPT with their writing. They're using it for lots of reasons. Some students are fluent in 3 other languages, but not English, and now they're being asked to write in English. So I have to ask myself, is it acceptable for a student to use a bot to help improve their grammar because, their syntax in their native language doesn't work like English syntax? And part of the way I answer that question for myself is, if a human were doing it, how bad would that seem to you? So if I if I hired a tutor or an editor, I went to the writing center and the writing center said, here's the issues with your grammar, and even explained what those issues are, which is something ChatGPT can do, would that be bad? No, I don't think so. I think that would be great. We'd be psyched that this student was working hard to improve their grammar. I would also say that there are so many other apps right now, regardless of something like ChatGPT, that students are using, from spell check to Grammarly, that are going to correct those errors, or going to improve that syntax, or are going to, get rid of those run-ons. That I wouldn't say no advanced degree student should be using something like ChatGPT. And I wouldn't say they should be doing anything without assistance, because who among us does an entire thesis without assistance, or writes a book without assistance? So I just would want to make a little line between assistance, which we all use and need, and too much assistance. So when we get over to the too much side, which is being decided in individual classrooms around the country, yeah, then we have a problem. But assistance, period, no.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, people didn't freak out like this when Google search came in.
Yeah, although we did freak out when spell check came in. So, something to think about.
Some of us think spelling is genetic.
See now? Yeah. All right. I see a question about the environmental impact of ChatGPT. Yeah. I think students are becoming more aware, but only just. And you remember when OpenAI and ChatGPT first emerged in 2022, everybody was so amazed and befuddled by the tool, that they weren't thinking about all of the water and all of the electricity that these servers take up. I think now a little bit more. I know I've stopped using ChatGPT and others just for the heck of it because of the environmental concerns. And I'll just take up a question below from Jessica, who asks, were there students who are reluctant to use ChatGPT? And the answer to that is yes, as well. Some students feel very strongly that they're not going to get any help from any kind of machine, although they're happy to receive help from humans. Some students know that ChatGPT and other bots take their data. So when they write to ChatGPT, ChatGPT is sucking up their data and they want their privacy. And some students are just nervous about where the line are, and they haven't made that decision for themselves, and neither has their school. So they're just nervous about stepping into that water.
I think the questions here, these are good ones, Sarah, about have any of the studies looked at students in terms of using generative AI for research skills and critical thinking, to the earliest point from Walter about the lowest common denominator. I mean, I worry more about young children who are learning to write, but there's sort of two sides of this spectrum, right?
Yeah. I think just now studies, researchers are working on research skills, looking at how students use something like ChatGPT for research. And I can tell you, based on just the little bit of research I've been doing, that students tend, once they're in an app like ChatGPT, not to bounce around. So they don't leave to go to Wikipedia. They don't leave to go to other sources to check, even though Claude and Gemini say, check my sources. Once they're in that app, they're generally not leaving that app. So that's a problem. And that is why teachers and administrators have to be transparent with kids and show them all of the mistakes that ChatGPT can make, so that kids understand what this autofill, how wrong it can get things. I think where we fall down is by not talking about those things, as opposed to being super transparent about all the mistakes it can make. I think that's one of the things that we need to do in our classrooms. Because yes, I think students' research skills will suffer. Although, to some degree, we have to evolve our sense of what research skills are now that we have the internet, as opposed to.
Sarah, don't you think, though, that this emphasis on cheating isn't the horse out of the barn? I mean, the idea that we're going to forbid kids from using it, I don't think that's going to work either.
No, I don't think so. And I think in 2022 and 2023, many school systems banned things like ChatGPT. And now most of those bans have been lifted or modified. And I, as administrators, and I say to one another, there's always been cheating. There always will be cheating. Used to be borrowing from your neighbor. Now it's Spark Notes. Now we've got ChatGPT. So cheating stays. And a recent poll showed of about, I think it's like 7,000 students, at least in terms of what they are expressing, that they're not doing any more cheating with ChatGPT than without. I think teachers might argue that with those results. But I think that cheating is, let's worry less about cheating and let's worry more about creating assignments that require human interaction, that are done in scaffolded ways so that teachers can see students as they're developing their ideas. The more robotic we make our assignments, the more likely students are to use a robot to finish those assignments.
Would you be tempted to do more in-class writing with comparison?
Yes, and I think many teachers are turning that way. Yes, we are going to have to do more in-class writing, but I think a lot of teachers who are creative and trying to address students' needs are already doing in-class writing because we're developing theses in class or we're looking for evidence in class.
Okay, fair enough. So a few more of these questions. These are all good questions. We talked about critical thinking. Can you discuss cognitive offloading with these tools, especially as kids start using them at younger and younger ages?
Yeah, so the idea of cognitive offloading, I guess, let me make sure that who's asking this question?
Oops, I'm sorry.
Whoever just asked that question, let me make sure we have the same definition of cognitive offloading. But in general, you might say, either I'm going to keep everything in my brain, no cognitive offloading, or I'm going to take this pen and I'm going to write down some of the things I'm going to get at the grocery store. Now I've offloaded some of my cognitive work to this piece of paper. So we have tools always for cognitive offloading, The question is always, so there's going to be cognitive offloading. Yes, that's what tools are for. The question is how much? And I think it may be that in the next 5 or 10 years, we see a shift, for example, in writing classrooms from focus on a rough draft and just generating the thing to focus on editing, revising, discussing, because people are going to be leaning on apps like ChatGPT to develop those first drafts. So I think in terms of our teaching economy, it's going to be about revision and discussion now. And we have to decide how we feel about that.
So Sarah, what about how should parents be supporting kids at home, working, for example, on a writing assignment? I mean, in my house, we love to write. So college essay time was fun because, my kids and I, we passed the essays all around. I know that doesn't happen everywhere, but what's a good role for parents?
Well, when I was writing my college essays, my parents pretty much locked me in the basement because I just hated the whole process so much.
Yeah.
So we need to think about the kids who don't love writing and who don't feel like natural writers and who in fact feel alienated in their writing classrooms. So what's a role for parents? Certainly to, again, just like in classrooms, look with your kids at what these tools can do and talk with them about the differences in the way the bot expresses itself and the way you express yourself. On the other hand, if you, let's say your parents don't speak English, but you're doing all of your work in English, then you're working with now your family to see what the bot can do, not just for you, but for them. But I think the key overall is just transparency, just like any other tool.
Okay, I know when we welcomed you at the Stanford Research Park, remember there was that woman who said she has employees who don't, English is not their native language. And she was finding it was really helpful to encourage them to do some proofreading through ChatGPT.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. Like it's one thing you want to learn a language, so you need to practice it and you need to make mistakes. Now, when you're sending a memo to your boss, maybe that's not the time that you want to be making your mistakes. We should have the option, and now we do, to have this editor, this kind of not really free editor because it's sucking up all of our environmental and data resources, to help us. So, and I see here a question too about a false sense of mastery.
Yeah.
And you can think of that in terms of language. If, let's say, a kid, if that colleague whose first language is not English only uses ChatGPT, will they then believe that they have mastered the English language? I don't think so. I think, that person is likely to have enough self-awareness to know that they still don't know, and they're leaning on this bot maybe too heavily. I think when it comes to mastery with something like ChatGPT, again, this has to do with transparency. So what makes a really strong essay? If ChatGPT can do it just like that, then we either need to come up with a new set of criteria for what an essay should be. We need to become more creative about the assignments that we're giving our kids, because otherwise, yeah, they for sure will think like, yeah, I know how to do it. Or rather, they'll think, I know somebody who can do it for me. So I think most kids aren't going to think they get it. They're going to know that they used somebody else, some other resource to do the thing for them. And I think ultimately that might make them feel less confident and not more confident.
Well, it could really impact things once they get to college and the workload gets higher, and maybe they really don't have that writing mastery that they thought they had. That could be a problem.
Yes, I agree. And that's why I think, well, there's two things, in the transition from high school to college, college is looking for creativity and nuance. At this stage, often high school is not. If you look at the standardized tests that students are asked to take at the end of their junior year, you'll see there's not a lot of interest, creativity, or nuance because obviously you can't assess that. So we're going to have to start in our high school classrooms creating assignments that call for creativity and nuance in ways that our current assignments do not.
Well, okay, here's another good question. Writer asks, can you help us understand if kids will become hurt by relying on AI instead of doing the hard work of learning themselves? It's been said that learning requires effort. AI reduces effort. Is there a chance that'll hurt their kids' ability to be intelligent rather than just pass classes?
Yes, I think, yes, there is absolutely a danger of that. In the same way, there's a danger of using Spark Notes all the time, or some other, tutor app, or purchasing a paper online. In the very same way, ChatGPT and other bots present the same dangers. And so the responses from classrooms and from students have to be about creating assignments where students cannot simply offload to ChatGPT. That's going to be the job of teachers now, because yes, otherwise there's absolutely, if students are giving ChatGPT all of their assignments, yes, they're not going to learn.
Well, and we hear so far from college admissions folks that they can tell the difference. I'm not so sure. What do you think, Sarah? This is going to be an issue.
Yeah, I think college admissions offices are pretty frightened, and it, I've looked at a lot of college essays, and many of them are pretty generic to begin with, because they're either they've been worked on by parents, they've been worked on by tutors, or kids don't have the resources or the knowledge to create an exciting, sexy, creative essay, and they're doing, just the kind of yeoman's version of an essay. Um, I have been fooled in tests that I've taken online about what's ChatGPT and what isn't with younger kids writing. In my own students' work, I think I generally can tell when I ask them to use ChatGPT. I can pretty much tell where it is and where it isn't. But yes, I think we're going to have to think about other ways to make the college essay work besides talk about a moment in your life that changed, that helped you learn something.
So this is a good question. I have adult children, and this is something that they're saying to me. Asker says, Kathy, what role do you think critical thinking has on learning to prompt well? Do you think that teachers should be teaching how to ask good questions?
Say that one more time.
What do you think? What role do you think critical thinking has on learning to prompt well? That is, using ChatGPT most effectively as a tool, learning to write those prompts.
Uh, if I'm understanding the question correctly, yes, teachers are going to help kids learn how to ask questions in the way that ChatGPT and other bots can answer them. But I think actually it doesn't take long to figure out what a bot is not getting and how to rephrase so that a bot is getting it. And they're getting so much better at understanding natural language that I think it's going to be even less and less of an issue. But I do think the issue of asking questions, period, is something that we need to work in our classrooms. That has nothing to do with technology, and that has everything to do with curiosity.
Yeah, really good point. So do you think that this kind of chat bot belongs in early elementary, or do you think teachers are going to stay away from it?
Well, the Secretary of Education most recently said that she would like to see artificial intelligence in the kindergarten classroom and up.
I would not.
I would not either. I think there are things that a bot can do, help kids hear words, help kids think about, monosyllabic words like cat, rat, and bat. And there are creative things that kids can do and teachers can do in kindergarten classrooms. But I'd like to not see too much of that happening in the early grades.
Yeah, I don't think that's really good advice. And again, in chat, this is an important comment. Jessica, everybody is crunched for time. Students are crunched for time. Parents are crunched for time. I admit I'm using ChatGPT sometimes to help me in a way that I didn't think I would either. So I guess we're all just going to be learning about this together. So, Sarah, it's been an exciting hour. We have come to the end of our hour. What kind of final words do you want to leave us, parents and students and educators, with today?
I think that despite the influx of all this new technology, there are still some principles that remain for teaching and learning, and those have to do with transparency, lack of fear, and curiosity. And those things are human things. Uh, Curiosity is a human thing, not a robot thing. And our job in the classroom and with our kids at home is to help them be curious and not afraid to ask questions.
I think those are perfect words to end with today, Dr. Sarah Levine. That is what we hope for all our children, parents, and it's okay to say that, right? As the technology moves us along. Well, thank you everybody for being with us today, for your fantastic questions and the chat and all of that. And to you, Dr. Levine, for a really wonderful discussion. We feel honored to be kind of at the cutting edge of where this research is going. And there's nobody we felt that would be better to talk about it than a teacher. So thank you for that.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it, everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care, everyone. Hope to see you again soon. Take a couple seconds and fill out that survey. Thanks, everybody. Good night for now.